Welcome to episode 5 of season 4 of Seat Designers. I'm Gareth Millward, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts Frederick Olsen.
Hello.
Okay. And Trolls Primate.
Hello. I don't know what I was doing there. That's weird. Sorry.
Well, it's certainly not Virginia Capus.
But the reason that they're doing silly voices is not just because they're complete arseholes, it's because this week we are going to be talking about voice acting with
Although it was primarily for that reason.
Yeah.
It was primarily for that reason, but we are joined by a guest who actually does some voice acting. We thought we'd get somebody in that knew what they were talking about to balance the three that don't. Welcome, Rebecca. How are you?
Hello, where's my lighter?
Oh, applause. Round of applause, gentlemen.
Absolutely brilliant.
It's like when you have those celebrated actors on late night talk shows, and all the host ever wants is just for them to do the funny voice you did and such.
You mean late last night talk? Night talk shows.
You have those Comic-Con panels, for instance, and you get all the voice actors from a show round, and you're supposed to ask them, questions about the show and the creators and the creating process and all that, and all they just go is, can you do that catchphrase from the show? That was really cool. And yes, for the 2000th time today, I will, for your benefit, of course.
Yeah, for those not in the know, Rebecca, as far as acting credentials go, that for stuff we have worked on, helped us out with the talkie version of the game Late Last Night, which we did over at No More for Today Productions. And it's out over on Game Jolt. You can get it at latelastnight.net. Night is as in N-I-T-E. I'm hoping someone will want to play this because no one actually has. So please, people, go play it. And that's
she's also done voices for real games. Let's just get that in there. Yeah. Stasis, among others. And we also completely neglected to mention her last name. It's just Rebecca, the artist known as Rebecca.
Yeah.
The only one.
Women have surnames.
Everyone, every British person at once, please. Okay, her last name is McCarthy, as in that American gentleman who was famous for... No, let's not go down that road.
Not liking communists one bit.
Yes. So Miss McCarthy, your stance on McCarthyism. Go. No, wait. Should we just get on topic?
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, because last week I was really bad at the whole staying on topic thing. I was the host of that show, and I deeply want to apologize.
No worries. You clearly also are this week.
Oh, definitely. It's late. I'm loopy, but we've handed the reins over to someone who's clearly more adept at this, being British and a scholar, and also perhaps maybe a gentleman.
No, maybe one of those things. Rebecca, what else have you worked on? We should probably introduce you properly. So, why did we bring you on? Go.
Yes.
Right, so I'm wondering that now. So I've been voice acting around 15 years now for a variety of things. Like I was in that AGDI remake of King's Quest 2. I voiced Graham as a small child.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, neat.
I've been in a few of kind of Leaf Shades games, various things around the internet. I was briefly in a Halo machinima that was on machinima.com about 10 years ago, and now it's scary because people still come on the videos going, I grew up watching this.
Oh, you get I grew up comments. That's fantastic. That's the hallmark of any true great creative genius.
Yeah, it's slightly worrying, actually. Like, I forget sometimes that I put things on the internet or these games come out, because occasionally, like, people in my real life find them and ask me about them, and I don't know how to deal with it.
And just to cap this off, a game that I have played, which you did voice acting in, which is phenomenally good and also very recent, is Stasis.
Yeah, it was like my big commercial game credit. It was quite funny how I got into that. Like a friend of a friend saw Chris Birchhoff's post on Twitter going, oh, he might need some voices for a few like audio logs. So I thought I'd send him a thing. And then I got an email back fairly quickly saying, oh, I'm rewriting some of it. There's a bigger part, and obviously the part ended up being Taya, who is kind of your main accompanying voice for quite a lot of the game. So that was quite fun to do, actually.
Oh yeah, the has a secret that is clearly not. She's clearly not all that she's claiming to be. Kind of part, the person who phones up the protagonist and goes, "I'll help you out. Don't worry, I have nothing to hide." It's a game for the whole family. Well, no. Well, it's perfectly obvious from the first word she utters. Is like, "Hi, I'm here to help you." Who the fuck are you? Don't you worry about that. I'll help you.
But
You go into these dangerous areas. I'm just going to sit here on the phone.
Yeah, exactly. And I haven't even finished it, so it's not a spoiler. I haven't actually gotten to the part where she goes, "By the way, I'm the devil incarnate," or whatever the fuck she is.
That's exactly the line. That's weird.
Interesting.
Oh, now you've spoiled it. But what you're saying there, Rebecca, kind of, beckons the next thing I want to get to, because you now we've covered your credentials a bit, and if I may, I of course know you from having actually hired you to do a failed project which is never going anywhere, which is the talkie version of Space Quest Vohol Strikes Back, which is never going to come out. It's horrible. People stop asking me for it.
No one's asking.
But I'm curious to hear what your I'm actually secretly, it's reverse psychology. I'm secretly hoping someone will start asking upon hearing this. But what's your background in acting? Is it like an interest of yours, or do you have a background in acting? Because you've been very active as far as getting your voice out there and participating in projects.
Are you starving? Is basically what we're asking.
Joe, the funny thing is, the last possible year is I actually wanted to do more writing. I got one game out, but I kept getting voice acting parts, and so I'm not going to turn down people if they're offering me work. But I started again, 15 years ago. So I was just making stupid stuff on my computer, and I had a program called, I think it's like X-Men Animation Studio or something.
I had the Batman version. It's horrible.
I thought it was amazing, but you could record samples of your voice and make little clips. So I made these terrible, terrible clips for a really long time. And at some point I found the internet, and there were like people making like anime fan dubs, and fairly quickly I found AGS. So then I just started sending voices, and it kind of snowballed from there. So I like making things, and I kind of like handcrafted indie things. So for me, it was kind of a way to get involved with that kind of thing.
Have you done anime fan dubs?
Oh yeah, a lot. That's kind of the bulk of my early stuff. Like, I've taken a bit of a break from it because there's the whole copyright thing, and like,
oh yeah,
I'm not that comfortable with doing too much fan stuff now. Like, I do the odd clip, but it's kind of an interesting skill then I've picked up, that I can look at like a clip, and if I've got a decent script, I can match the lip claps. So I've taught myself a skill from doing it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, doing anime fan dubs is it's a skill, isn't it? Because with Japanese being so radically different, even I'm gonna say professional voice dubbers. I mean the ones who actually have the license to put it out. Not to knock your professionalism at all, but the people who do it for a living, they have trouble matching up the dialogue to the mouth movements, because Japanese just goes so fast, and a full English sentence can be spoken in like 2 syllables in Japanese and shit. So yeah, good on you. I'm impressed. And
I mean, localization's kind of an important thing. Like, it even comes up in games. Like, people say, "Oh, so and so is being censored," but actually, when you're localizing a game, that you have to make a lot of decisions how you convey the meaning of the game in English as opposed to the original language.
Yeah, we had that talk with Alistair Beckett-King, colleague of yours with the Adventure X organization. But
organization is a strong word.
Well, yeah, but he was talking about translating his game into German, for instance, which was a headache and a half. At least you don't have to match up mouth movements, but then you have to match up humor, which is equally as hard, if you're the writer, that is. Does anyone else have a question?
Well, I'm curious to get more into the creative process, because having kind of tried and failed to be a drama teacher at one point, your attitude towards what style of acting you go for interests me. What's your creative process like when you get down in front of the microphone?
It depends. Like, you have to see what style the script is. So when I got started, I did a lot of kind of anime stuff. So that's kind of over the top. And I think if you take like an anime type thing and you under deliver or give a normal delivery, it can kind of sound flat. Whereas I've noticed now, as I'm getting older, there are a lot of younger people, kind of voice acting's taken off online. So there are a lot of people who are naturally younger, more energetic than I am. And actually, the most work I get where people scout me is for my natural voice. because they
right.
think I have a proper British accent, and you try to explain that I'm South London.
Yeah, and I mean that's why we having seen South London, it's there is no such thing as as one natural South London accent. I'm kind of getting, but yeah, I mean that's why we wanted you for late last night, because you seemed to have a voice. I think it was in my experience. I think I recommended you for that. It seemed to kind of work for this punk-ish protagonist, because you kind of think of punk as being this Sex Pistols South London thing, so that seemed to work out well, so I get that completely.
And it also helped that when we met you at Adventure X, you were decked out in fishnets and panda eyeliner and all that junk. So
yeah, that's why I went around looking for my lighter. I thought I'd method the whole weekend.
For anyone who's not played
thing.
Oh yeah. Let's hear from the doctor who actually lives in London. For us four. Sorry. No. Okay.
Not in London. I cannot take on that much debt. I do not live in London. Yeah, no, we did late last night, as Fred has said, and we hired we hired Rebecca in to do that, and she did an amazing.
Hired is a word that implies she will receive monetary compensation down the line, and I just wanted to alleviate any doubts. That's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, 50% of the sales at the moment, so that's working out to 50% of zero, which I don't know. I don't know the maths, but it must be loads. And I managed to write this. This puzzle, which required a lot of asking the question, "Where is my lighter?" And I think I dread to think how many times you had to record.
Hello, have you seen my lighter?
Or variations thereupon. But I apologise for that.
Well, you got your revenge, justifiably.
I suppose that's a good question to ask our esteemed guest. Is it's kind of the limitation of AGS is that you don't really. I mean. You don't really sort of go into the script and tell AGS to just play this WAV file over and over again, the same line over and over again. You have the separate line numbers, so even if it's the same line, they have different line numbers. So you just hand that script off to the voice actor and just tell them to go get on with it, and you end up, as in Rebecca's case, with having to say the line "Where is my lighter?" 50,000 times. So when Rebecca, when you get a script like that, and it's obvious that the people who've been writing it haven't actually bothered to go in and make your life easier, what's your reaction?
Anger, rage, disappointment.
All the good ones.
It's like actually a good point that people often think when they make a game, oh, I'll just get some voice actors, it'll be easy, and they don't actually think about the process of managing a project. I think that happens a lot of freeware and small indie projects is people don't dedicate enough time to project management. Not to have a go at you guys.
No, you're absolutely correct.
True.
I mean, on that script, I probably I think I did ask at one point, do you need all these differently, and then go from there. Because actually, the line "Where is my lighter?" that could have been said in very different circumstances, and it could played out of order. So you can use one sample, but you also have to think about it's interactive, and the player could encounter that line from different circumstances. So sometimes you do need to record multiple versions of a line. The special edition of Monkey Island did that really, really well. The insult sword fighting, where they actually had the actor for Guybrush record 2 versions of all the insults. So there's the normal one, but they also recorded an upset version for when you get the wrong insult.
Ah, right, yeah. And I think Curse of Monkey Island way back when did the same thing, if I remember correctly. Where you still have insult sword fighting, but this time it's at sea, so you have to rhyme. And if I remember correctly, when you pick the wrong one, he sounds like he's completely in doubt about what he's doing. And it adds a certain dimension to it. It's very, very funny to listen to.
Right. And I don't think you should have voice acting unless it adds something. Like a lot of people, I see them going, oh, I'm doing a commercial game, and they'll pay their artists, their coders, writers, and then you say, oh, but I can't actually afford to pay the voice actors, but can you do it for free? You'll get exposure. I always kind of wonder on that. It's like, I don't mind doing free stuff for fan games, but if you can't afford to pay voice actors, but you can afford to pay everyone else, maybe you can't afford voice acting.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Musicians seem to get the same raw deal as well. It seems to be anything to do with audio. It seems to be, oh, well, you're just talking or you're just playing an instrument. I mean, it's not that difficult. If it wasn't that difficult, you can do it yourself, surely.
Yeah, that is the short end of the stick thing. And also, with regards to both music and voices, there's very little in terms of direction, really, because, like I said, you just get handed this script, this text document of hundreds of lines, and then it's up to the actor to actually get in touch with the project lead and go, so how do you actually want this line read? Do you want me to sound exasperated, which I am right now, or enthusiastic or helpful or whatever?
That's actually a very good question that we should maybe stick a bit with, because have you ever had the opposite experience of what Trolls is mentioning here? Have you ever had legit direction?
It should be mentioned we are still talking about like low-level free games and not AAA titles, who of course will throw buckets of money at this stuff.
Well, I mean, not necessarily. You did Stasis. Did you have more direction for that project than you did for all the indie stuff that you've? I mean, Stasis is an indie game as far as I know. We're not in AAA territory, but it's certainly a bigger project in scope.
Yeah. So, sorry. So what we did for Stasis is I recorded in quite large chunks because Chris had written out like a full script, like a kind of film script. So I would literally record chunks and then he would go back through it and send me like notes on anything he wanted change or alternate takes. I think I probably sent him 2 or 3 takes anyway for each line. So I'd literally go through, do a chunk, do a chunk, do a chunk. And that's honestly the way I prefer to do it for a lot of games. I have actually been directed an audio booth once, and I found the process like really, really intense. Like I think I probably did some of my best voice acting, but a lot of indie games, the people doing the directing, unless you hire a voice director, I think it can actually be detrimental because you need to know what you're doing. Directing is another like specific skill, and a good director can get a really good performance out of an actor and actually get performances from all the different actors that match, because that's another thing, is that when you're casting a voice project, if you can't get everyone in together, which games very rarely do, you have to be really, really careful that you cast and direct the voices so they blend together, because otherwise people will hear the game and the voices won't match when they're played against each other.
Yeah,
we're clapping our hands here because we've discussed this intensely, and Trolls has made some great points about this, about physically getting together in the studio and being able to play off of each other.
It's what the hell was I going to say before you interrupted? Direction. I think it's one of those things where you hire a voice actor, and the profession is acting with your voice, but people who aren't really sure of what a voice actor actually does also seems to think that encompasses script doctoring and directing yourself, and in some cases even editing the voice clips for the game or cartoon or whatever. So being an audio engineer and such. And that's not what you hire voice actors to do. You hire them to act with their voices.
I think that's one of the interesting things about the Blackwell series. I don't know if any of you have gone into the director's commentaries there, but there's some really interesting stuff from Dave Gilbert, who's the sort of the director of the studio, and he talks about physically getting people into his front room to record so he can direct them so that he can record it properly. And he seems to understand drama and acting and voice acting and all of the things that you're saying, Rebecca, about the things that drive you nuts. He at least seems to try to minimize as best he can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually losing my voice now. It's funny.
Dear me, we're taking away her bread and butter.
Yeah, I've spoken to Dave about this, and actually on his most recent games, he's working with a casting director and using a small studio now. And so I think his stuff, the voice acting was always very, very good, but you can actually slightly hear it a little bit more in the more recent stuff that he's kind of upped it, because I think he's very conscious.
Yeah, and Blackwell Legacy is a bit rough around the edges, but it gets progressively better as the series moves on.
Oh, we've reached the point where other people are hiring him to do voice direction. Kathy Rain, a game that he had nothing to do with besides voice directing, has. Well, I think I just said that he directed the voices for that one, And interestingly, I had a conversation with him. He actually tried to sort of poke and prod the writer, director of the game, and just go, "Well, there are some story elements. Can I give you some advice here?" And the guy was just, "Thanks, Dave. This is not your game, by the way." But yeah, actually, a question for our esteemed guest once again is Dave Gilbert is the writer of the game, and he's also the voice director. And a thing that popped into mind a little while ago was if being directed in the studio, in the booth, by the actual person who wrote the game's dialogue. And I was thinking of the Al Lowe games when when Leisure Suit Larry went to CD-ROM, and when you got Torrance Passage, and never mind what you think of Torrance Passage and Leisure Suit Larry, but they did have some phenomenal voice acting, at least in my opinion. It's when Sierra really got the point. These are the, even with Gabriel Knight, the voice acting was a little all over the place. With Al Lowe games, the voice acting is pretty much spot on from start to finish. But he wrote the actual dialogue. So the question, in a roundabout fashion, was, do you find it easier or harder to record while being directed by the guy who or girl who wrote the actual stuff, meaning they might be a little precious about how you deliver the lines, versus a person who was brought in to do the voice directing, who's not as emotionally attached to the material?
I think, honestly, the best thing is if they've got a skill as the director, because I have done like Skype sessions where someone's directed me and they were really, really bad at it, and it was just really awkward. But on the other hand, I've only been in a professional like audio booth once, and I was being directed by like the voice producer there, and it made such a difference. Like they were like, I had like a room, like, so it was a Sims Machinima, and it won a contest to get shown in cinemas nationwide. And as part of the before Hot Fuzz for some reason, and then as part of the contest, our audio was like, because it'd been recorded by various people online, was kind of bad. So as part of the contest, they invited us into Side, which is a professional studio that does a lot of games like Dragon Quest. And I got to go in there and record. And so I had like one of the audio engineers from Side. I had like 3 of the PR people involved in this like promotional campaign, plus the guy who directed it and his mate, all in the booth looking at me. I'm in a Pros Audio setup, so professional microphones are really, really sensitive. Like I was making notes on the script and I could hear the pencil through my headphones.
Wow.
So you got all this set up. I'm like trying to think, remember all the voice tips I've learned, and like all these people directing me, and then I've got like the guy who directed it, all these PR people directing me. And it was really, really intense, but I think I did some of my best voice work I've ever done on that session.
And the panic attack only lasted a lunch break, and then it was right back in there.
Yeah, I'm always panicking. The secret's like Bruce Banner is always angry. I'm always panicking. It's just levels of panic.
Excellent.
Well, that is very British.
Well, so just to flip it around, we've talked a lot about how you work as a voice actor, and we'll get back to more of that because there are questions yet unanswered. But I just wanted to get a feel for what do you think is good voice acting? What games have you played that were just fucking stellar versus games where you just go, I can't believe they obviously put time and effort into a project that just is so horribly flat and uninteresting, or something. Like best and worst list, just a quick one. Have you got anything prepared?
So recently, I think the game I've played with the best voice acting was Everybody's Gone to the Rapture.
Damn, I haven't played that.
It's
the title.
It's a air quotes because some people will get upset, walking simulator game set in Britain, where there's basically you're in a British village. I think maybe it's meant to be sort of 70s, 80s, and it's completely abandoned, but you can't even interact with that much beyond a few gates and things and telephones. But you walk in houses and you see these glowing shapes, and then they start playing events from the past. And the voice acting in that is really solid. I think they probably got some like proper BBC radio drama type people to do the voices. And that game's audio kind of elevates it because there's very little traditional game there, but it's all about the music and the acting. And it was really the performances I thought in that were really solid.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice. Kind of reminds me the way you're describing it of Oxenfree, a game that I'm going to get back to later on in the show, because also for technical reasons, but just on the professional level, with the quality of voice acting in Oxenfree, it just sounded natural and free flowing. It sounded like these people were actually having a conversation versus just reading their laundry list.
What about the other way around? Do you have any examples where it went completely wrong and you're thinking that this game would actually be stronger if I could just pretend that the voices are in my head? As opposed to this shit acting that may have been in there.
Oh gosh, off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember the full title. There's a Mega Man game on the PlayStation that has anime cutscenes, and it sounds to me like they were dubbed in Australia. And I'm trying to remember which Mega Man game it is, but there's this like cutscene where it's like, you got like Australian Mega Man. He's like, Colonel, you killed him, and then it's just so bad. Like, just why? Like, it must have had a Japanese version. It's like, unless you're gonna dub it proper, just subtitle it, please. Why would you do this if you're not gonna spend the money?
Of course the worst one for me is the uneven voice acting, because you can have like really, really bad voice acting and it almost becomes like Mystery Science Theater fodder, and then you have like good quality voice acting where you're not even realizing that these are people reading a script because it's just so good, and then you have the middling ground. And I think people will disagree, but I think the early Sierra titles like Space Quest 4 and King's Quest 5 fall in the middling category, where there's a lot of awful voice acting, like Michael from the mailroom, come in here, you're a dragon now, sit the fuck down. And then you have like Josh Mandel putting his heart and soul into the longest, most painful scream you've ever heard King Graham utter, and this kind of stuff. And you have like Gary Owens amidst a crew of people waiting to eat lunch. It's like,
and do coke.
And do a bunch of coke, which is
yes, Sierra in the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that and again, just to go back to it, because I've played it recently and it comes to mind as an example of it being done well. I mean, some of the Blackwell voices, it's clear that there are people in there that are not full-time professional voice actors. They're people that, and Dave freely admits it, it's people he knows, it's people that wanted to be part of the game and things like that. But even those people who are clearly not professional are put in the right part and directed in the right way for it to at least come together as, you can tell it's not 100% polished, but you can only tell that if you're looking for it. If you just want to immerse yourself in the game, for the most part you can. And I think there's definitely some real benefit, I think, to actually having a clue what you're doing in terms of the planning and the direction of the whole thing.
The entire time you were talking about that, I was just thinking, that describes Late Last Night perfectly, doesn't it? Because the three of us did voices for that game of varying quality in performance, and then we had Rebecca as the protagonist, the one professional in the group.
Well, that's not entirely true, because we also have
Sarah Wilson.
She sound clearly has a professional rig as well. So I thought we had those two professionals who really carry the game, and the rest was just shits and giggles, basically.
So I guess the question put to Rebecca, I'm trying to think of a question now because we've just gone down this. Okay, let's switch gears. Let's talk technology. Let's talk games in particular. Games with voice acting. One thing that was brought up when we talked with Alistair and has been brought up many times is that one of the real detriments to games, especially adventure games, is the mechanics of voice acting. Having lines that are then interrupted by other lines. You can't have a natural dialogue flowing because people are just waiting for their turn to. All the characters are just waiting for their turn to speak. So it really falls onto the voice actor to make it sound believable, even though you're conversing with a person who is not in the room that you'll probably never meet. So how do you?
There is an element of artifice.
Yes. So how do you sort of get in the mindset that you're now having a conversation, a very one-sided conversation in the recording booth or wherever you're doing it, Rebecca?
I guess you just have to use your imagination. So you I hate.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah, that thing in the mind pictures.
Damn, I could have told myself that.
I always prefer to have the full script where you can see what the other characters are saying. I mean, it's not always practical in games. Sometimes you will just get, okay, we need 20 fighting sounds. But if you're actually doing a full on scene, it's always good to have the other actors' lines there. And again, that's where direction comes into point of view, because sometimes the way the other character delivers the line can affect how you're doing a line. I have been in a few games where I've kind of sent in a load of voice work and they've mixed it in with someone else, and you go, but they've taken another decision, and so it doesn't quite work. So, I mean, when I record at home and I'm doing like something where I can't hear the other person, my general thing is to put in other takes. Like, I mean, for Stasis, there were a few scenes where I was like, how well is Taya lying? Like, because there were a few lines where she's being helpful. And I'm like, is she really being helpful here? Or is she, like, how much do I bleed through? So there were a few places in that game where I took different takes and then it's mixed through, and I can kind of tell they're from different takes. But so far, cross fingers, no one else has figured it out. So,
have you ever did you like on a goof just throw in a couple of really Cruella de Vil types where you're just laughing and cackling and going, "I will help you"? Probably not. I was just having a laugh.
Well, that does bring up a point when you're, to anyone who's thinking about doing like online voice acting for indie games and stuff. If you send someone something, there is a potential they could use it in the game. So I've a few places like I've gone, okay, they want it done like this, so I just send this take out. I'm not particularly happy with it, but they were like, okay, I want a couple of takes that are kind of a bit more hostile or going in the direction that I didn't like. And of course, those are the takes they use.
Oh, of course.
So in a way, when I record at home, I have control over what I send.
Right.
A couple of points about method again with that the process or the technology and stuff, trying to circumvent this line after line thing. I've heard that Dave, and he might have to correct me on this, but I've heard that he actually likes to do that thing that you do with cartoon voiceovers, which is to actually read the other part. Like you're rehearsing lines for a play, for instance. Like he will read the other part to the voice actor and then have them respond to that line instead of just just turn on the mic and go. Why don't people do that more? That's kind of what I want to know, because I get the sense that most of the time it's just they hand you a script, they turn on the mic, and then they hit record and they go, in your own time, my dear.
Yeah, and Orson Welles gets pissed off because he has to say that peas grow at the farm in June.
He doesn't do anything?
I guess it's just because it's time intensive. Like, to set up like a Skype call or something where you're directing someone just takes a lot of time that people don't have. Because it gets to the point where if you invest that much time in doing the voice acting online, then you could just as easily rent a studio. Like that could be quite pricey, but then there's a kind of value for money. That's why proper studios with proper equipment are expensive, to allow someone to be in the room, feeding lines or directing.
Have you had the Ed Wood experience? Like the first take is abysmal, and the guy just goes, "That's perfect. We'll take that. Next one."
All the time, but that's why I'm careful what I'm saying. Like a few times that I've someone's put me under deadline pressure and I've just done something quickly and then I've sent it and I expected them to come back and they don't, and they use it, and then that's on the internet forever.
That's okay. I do have more questions, but I feel like I'm sort of usurping the entire thing. So I just want to see if my colleagues have any questions before I switch gears once again.
I would like to, go. This is all extremely fascinating, but I'm sort of thinking that the thing about.
But I'm sort of bored.
No, not at all. But I'm sort of thinking that the question about games with good voice acting and games with shit voice acting may as well be an open question. So I want to pose to you guys what games you've played that were on either side, and I want to start with Gareth, who is, and I quote, seething with anger right now because his recording software have stopped working. Mine is still working. Well,
yeah, well, it seems to be working now. I'm sure it'll be fine. But Well, that actually brought me on to the thing that I think is one of the things that can take away from an acting performance is the performance could be absolutely fine, but if you're having to massively compress your voice files, as was done in the early 90s with some of those Sierra games, right, or you're working with people because you can't afford to pay them or for their equipment, you're working with voice actors that are basically just using the internal mic on their laptop's webcam.
Or you hired a narrator who's very, 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 very slow.
Well, you could have that as well. as well.
There could be a secret passage.
Yes.
You don't even want to play to the end of it because we have to be done by like.
I was going to say, yeah, we've only got an hour for an episode. I can't play the entire clip. But I mean, that kind of uneven, not just in the quality of the actual the performance from the thespians, but the uneven quality of the audio can sometimes take you out of things as well. I mean, so that's obviously something the actor doesn't have much control over. I don't think there's really sort of a natural jump-off point from that, but it was just something that I kind of noticed.
Also, bonus point for using the word thespian. That's
thespian.
Yes, you almost can't say it without putting on this voice. That's my Gary Owens voice.
Yes, you can, thespian.
Oh. Well, when you say it that low, it sounds like. Yeah, you kids, you
so
do
Gareth,
the
you're
game.
talking about games where the technology leaves the voice acting at a disadvantage as being examples of bad voice acting. But if you have to be positive for a moment, and I know this is extremely hard in light of the great Toblerone scandal of 2016, do you have any examples of games that did it exactly as you would like them to do in terms of voice acting?
Well, I think a lot of modern games, now that audio equipment, the cost has come down considerably, we don't have to worry about trying to squeeze something onto a CD at very low bit rate because otherwise our computers will explode, which I think was the main problem with Space Quest 4. I mean, there's some very good voice acting in Space Quest 4. It just sounds like it's coming off a wax cylinder sometimes because of how much they've compressed it. But I think a lot of modern games do it very well. I mean, there's not a huge amount of voice acting in it, but I thought Gone Home was very, very well done because there's a lot that they need to sort of get across. It can't be cartoonish. I mean, I know Rebecca was talking about sort of anime and about having to sort of be very clear with the lines that you do, especially when you're in a computer game. There's that sort of sense that it's not entirely a natural dialogue. But I thought Gone Home did that very well. I know it was a series of monologues effectively, but that was very good. And just to say it again, I think the Blackwell series does it very, very well, especially considering the budget they're working on.
Interestingly, when you're talking about bit rates being like an opponent of good voice acting, one of my favorite games is Beneath a Steel Sky. I just thought I'd mention that again. The original CD-ROM with the full voice talkie and everything comes in at about 74 megabytes, which is nothing. It's like for an entire fucking game. And the voices are 8-bit, like 6 kilohertz or something. It really sounds like you're just holding your hand over your mouth and going, what's everyone doing?
It's good cartoon acting. I think.
But the voices
it's a bit over the top, but it's good.
The voices in Beneath the Steel Sky are really, really good. And I think, I don't remember if it was Charles Cecil who said that, or someone from Revolution said that they actually did record the entire game with a set of actors and then leaned back, had a listen to it, and went, these people are awful, and just went to some local theater company and recast the entire game at great expense and at the last minute. And that's the version we got. And then they compressed it to utter shit. So, yeah, just a little anecdote there.
I believe I've heard that story. So what would you highlight as the worst, basically, assuming Beneath the Steel Sky is your favorite? Because I totally get with that. The acting is brilliant.
Let's see. Being a kid growing up playing adventure games, I started with, diskette versions. The children listening to this might have to ask their dad what the hell a diskette is, but, couldn't fit voices on disc games. So when I got the CD-ROM version of a game on disc that I'd previously played on disc. Sorry, let me try that. When I got the CD-ROM version of a game that I'd already played on disc, and I heard the voices for the first time, it was usually one of those, wait, that character isn't supposed to sound like that. What the hell is going on
because you had
here?
all the voices going in your head.
Yeah, and I remember my positive... Yeah, and my positive experience with that was Day of the Tentacle, because I thought the voices matched exactly what I heard in my head. Conversely, Sam and Max, although I dearly, dearly love the...
Shut up! For God's sake, just shut up!
Exactly. Nick Jameson as Max is one of my favorite voices of all time. I'm not knocking that. But some of the, other characters in the game was kind of like, what fucking voice did they just give man, I mean, that's just like the dude with the fishing pole who's hunting for, who was, just standing there fishing forever. It's fishing trout or something. And he has this weird voice that it was used in Day of the Tentacle as well. I'm just going, why is, I think it's, no, it's not Tom. It's this Thomas Jefferson is one of the founding fathers. He just does the exact same voice. And I'm just going, why would they put him in there? And he sounds like a Woody Allen impersonation.
Right. Well, that's actually...
Is that the monotone voice guy? Because I want to say that someone quite famous that was in a lot of films in that era as well. That was his thing. I can't remember his name.
I think someone said that the fish guy has sort of a Woody Allen inflection to it. But he just, having just played Day of the Tentacle, I was just like, why would you go there? And of course, you got your King's Quest 5 and Space Quest 4, where you just go, okay, cool, that's a strange voice. Like there's that cameo of the when you talk to the garbage can in Space Quest 4, and the secret agent. It turns out the garbage can is actually a secret agent hiding out, and he's been in this arcade hall for God knows how long, and all the kids, throw their garbage on top of his head and all this stuff. And they got Mark Siebert, the music director, to do it, and he just does not have a voice meant for voice acting. Sorry, Mark. And you can just tell he's trying to act all flustered and such, and you can just hear the guy is just reading this off a list going, geez, I just fucking hate these kids, man.
That stuff actually reminds me of one that I'm kind of sad to say falls flat most of the time, and it does some stuff really, really well, but Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis has some very awkward voices. The conversations in it sound awful. I mean, all credit to Doug Lee, who is actually the closest thing to Harrison Ford being in the studio. He sounds great, but most of the cast just sound like they have no idea what they're doing, and they're basically just reading off this sheet. And it's such a shame, because it's such a vivid recreation of the Indiana Jones universe as you see it in the films. It's the fourth Indiana Jones movie that never was, but I actually think the floppy version, which is, completely impossible to track down these days, because of course when you get these games on Steam and GOG and what have you, it's always the CD version they go for. I actually think the floppy disk version might be better, because you can imagine you can imagine Harrison Ford and Denham Elliott and all of these real actors as opposed to their probably somewhat cheaper voice acting counterparts. No offense intended to anyone.
Oh yeah, the guy playing Marcus was not Denham Elliott. Good lord, Indy, is there some person from the Third Reich?
I'm not even sure he was British. On the other end of the spectrum, I would highlight Portal 2 as a game that I thought was absolutely brilliant in terms of voice acting. In particular, Stephen Merchant and J.K. Simmons. I mean, those guys are just acting their asses off, and I get kind of an improv vibe from that whole game, because there's so much madness going on in it, but it's absolutely brilliant and hilarious, and Simmons especially just gives it 110% and knocks it out of the park. It's incredible.
Okay, can I ask our guest a question? Because I think we're kind of ignoring her at this point. That's not very polite of us. I actually had the question about creating a. Oh, she's back at the mic. I hope.
Yeah. I've woken up. No. Yeah. I was like,
Sorry.
I was just enjoying I was finding it interesting, actually.
Oh, good.
This is what happens to me, and they take the piss.
Did you hear that, trolls? Did you hear that?
Oh, you're the first person who's ever called whatever comes out of Frederick's mouth enjoyable. So anyway,
no comment.
No.
After last week.
Oh, definitely not. I should watch what I say. Now, the question comes about creating a character, because brief background, I'm actually very interested in voice acting, being absolutely awful at it myself, but watching DVD extras on my Futurama DVDs, for instance, and seeing this very small cast of characters, the small cast of voice actors doing this large ensemble, voice cast. You got people like Billy West, who can basically just do any voice imaginable, and there's these DVD extras of the voice director going, yes, that's a good voice, but could we give him like 20% southern pastor-ish voice? And then he kind of goes in and modifies the character a little. It's like turning dials on this guy. So I guess the question is, how do you go about creating a character? Do you do like odd voices, first of all? And second, how do you go about creating a character from the brief and the script that you get?
So I can teach myself voices. It's something I kind of did before I got into voice acting. So I'm fairly decent. Like I can learn new voices, and I just do that by playing a sample like over and over and over and over and again, mimicking it. And sometimes I get it wrong, which is fine because I get a new voice out of that.
Can you give an example, please? I want to hear it.
What, just doing a voice?
Yeah, it's just a weird voice that you couldn't tell was you doing it.
Okay, well, let's think. I'm not sure about that. Can you say it again?
I remember
voice?
that. Wait, I remember that voice. Because as far as I remember, and it's such a shame that it's not out there. Someone should leak all the files in a torrent or something one day. But that was actually the voice you did for Rupert the Ape Kid in Vohall Strikes Back as well. I remember now you did that as well.
It sounded like Milhouse from The Simpsons, which also is a very good one. Sorry, yeah. Back to Rebecca about creating characters out of weird voices.
Well, see, weird voices are kind of a tool you can use for a character, especially if something's comedy. But actually, the performance is the central thing. Like, a weird voice isn't necessarily what you need, and a fake accent can actually bring. When you talk about writing and creating, suspension of disbelief, where you want someone to stop thinking this is imaginary and just get caught up in the story. And so a bad accent or a bad performance can yank someone out of that. So when I look at a character, when I'm looking for something to audition for, I know what my range is. So I immediately go, okay, medium, high voice, I can do this. Accents, yeah, I can do that accent. But then when I actually think about the character, I look at the information I have, what the character looks like, what any other voices in the game sound like, and then I build the character from there. And as I said, for me, recently, that other than that kind of small kid voice, the most work, in quotes, work, implying payment, not always the case, I get is for my natural voice. I guess I don't know if it's because there's a trend for the stuff I'm going for more natural performances, or if it's a case of people preferring a more natural delivery. But they decide, I guess the person casting the game decides that's the voice I want. So
okay, yeah. So you've never been asked to go in and read for Troll Wife number 2 or something. Assuming trolls, of course, are what's the word? Polyamorous.
I know you have a wife.
I don't know where the fuck I was going with that. No, but you go, okay, that's a good one. Can you give her a Scottish accent and maybe a bit more gravel and something? You've never had that direction, I'm guessing.
Sometimes I have. There's this weird thing. It's happened 4 times where someone goes, "Can you sound more like this?" And then they link Galadriel from Lord of the Rings, and I just can't do the Galadriel thing. I've really tried. Maybe I should just sit down and learn it one day. But they do. It sometimes happens, and sometimes I can come back and they go, "Okay, can you make it a little bit more Scottish or whatever?" And sorry, Scottish friends listening, I can try, and sometimes they will do that, but I don't tend to get that kind of direction from the kind of indie game creators that I work with. They tend to have a specific thing they're looking for, and they ask for people who can already do it, or they listen to my demo and ask for a voice they've heard.
I would dearly love.
That's another thing that the director's commentary for the Blackwell Legacy. Just to riff on this, because this is what can barely count as any kind of research that I've done for this episode. One of the things that Dave
PhD,
says
everyone.
is that. Yeah. PhD, everyone. Yeah. Oh, it's all Wikipedia and bluff. That's what a PhD is.
And marijuana.
Sadly, no. That comes from not having any money and not having any contacts, I think, rather than an active choice. The thing with that Dave kind of says is that he deliberately tries as best he can to not get people to put on an accent, because he says that if you're thinking too much about getting the accent right, you're not thinking about getting the emotion into the words and trying to act, really. So, I mean, he's had a few voices. He's had Francisco does a Jamaican guy in one of the games where the accent actually helped the voice and helped get into the character. But for the most part, he tries to steer people away from putting on a voice because, certainly for his games anyway, it's the emotional bit that is what he's looking for.
I would dearly love to hear Miss McCarthy in a game like I'm watching Resident Evil 7, a Let's Play of because I would never be able to play that game on my own. And these are they're caricature rednecks, of course, but they start out in their natural voice. And well, spoiler alert, shit goes down and they start mutating horribly. And the more they mutate, because it's like this gradual thing,
they start mutating horribly, and then they go vote for Trump.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, satire.
Oh, current political satire. No,
Hashtag current events.
No, they
whenever we release this episode, it's going to be worse off than it is now, so I already feel guilty.
That has been the pattern, yeah.
You've just horribly dated this. You know, when the space carrots take over, they're going to go, who is this Trump person they keep referring to? Because, of course, the space carrots are going to listen to the show. No, I was just...
Isn't Trump one of them?
You know what? Well done. I didn't even catch that one myself. That's excellent. No, I just wanted to hear you starting off in your natural voice, and then your character goes through like a horrible Resident Evil type mutation gradually, and it becomes more gruff and more inhuman to the point where you have to start adding filters and shit to your voice just to get that full-on demonic touch. I would dearly love. I hope that happens in Stasis, although I get the feeling it doesn't. But anyway, how would you go from? Let's just say you're in a Resident Evil game, and I'm just trying to get into your process here. Like, how would you go from, your normal speaking voice and then just gradually go, I'm now more and more of a bulbous, weirdly freaky mutated monster thing?
Okay, so one thing you should, when you learn to voice act, is you actually have to learn not to speak what I think is, if I remember the term, is a head voice. Right now, I'm just chatting normally, and my voice, I can feel it's coming from the top of my throat. But if I start voice acting, then it will go deeper, because what I want to do is bring my voice to my chest so there's more resonance and the voice will record better. And then if I was becoming more demonic, well, I need to think of some voice traits. So I know I can change my voice very quickly. If you heard the little boy voice, by becoming gruff. So maybe I bring a little bit of that in, like a little bit of grit. And then I move back, and maybe it's going to turn into the kid voice. But as long as I don't get too perky and I think about my delivery, I can just keep going deeper and deeper. And I should probably not go too deep because I'm not warmed up properly. But you can hear the voice moving.
Oh dear, holy shit, Father Karras just fell down the stairs.
No, that's really. I'm a big metalhead myself. Don't worry, this is going someplace. The whole thing about if you're in a metal band, they teach you to not actually do the shouty voice from your throat and such. Always go from the chest, because A, you will fuck up your voice in a hurry, and B, you actually get more power and volume if you learn to actually do it from the chest as opposed to the esophagus kind of thing. And I get the sense that it's the same with voice acting. You're not going for your natural speaking voice. You're actually going for more from down here kind of thing. I'm pointing at my chest. You can't obviously see.
Well, I guess I think that goes for singing in general. If you use your head voice, and I've done this, I don't sing often, but whenever I've had to in any kind of capacity where I was in front of a microphone, I would have my voice coming from my throat. And you can't keep going for very long. Your voice will be completely toast after like half an hour. So I completely understand that. And I think it goes for every single case where you have to really put a strain on your voice, not just voice acting on metal or whatever.
Oh, shit.
And he does not sound like that anymore, having seen them live about a decade ago.
That is, however, his normal voice.
And don't get me started on the Kiss gig in 2008. That was awful. The acoustics were so horrible that I thought at the gig, this sounds pretty great. I can't believe Paul Stanley still sings like this. And then I actually bought a CD recording, a soundboard recording of the gig, and I put it on, and the guy sounds fucking horrible. Poor man.
That's how. But I've done like music myself where it's supposed to be this hard rock, punkish, screamy type things, and I do like 4 or 5 songs in a row because that's all the time I have. My voice is just shot by the end.
None of us are Mike Patton or Greg Puciato. So
interestingly, good voice acting. Has anyone seen the game The Darkness, or even the first Portal game?
I love the first Portal game.
Mike Patton is actually in that.
That's true, yeah. What is he voicing?
He's voicing the Anger Cube, which is basically just him going...
Yeah, that's basically the same thing he did for the movie I Am Legend.
Yes. And most of the Fantomas music.
He does that a lot. I mean, I'm imagining that's just what Mike Patton sounds like. Hey, Mike, you want to go down and rehearse some Faith No More? That's Mike Patton for you.
No, he's actually got a very pleasant speaking voice. However, Marilyn Manson's voice is shot at this point. He sounds like he just, gargled gravel for breakfast.
Yeah, but I thought you were going to say Brexit. But moving back to voice acting from metal music, as much as I love metal music, I just want to hear. We're getting into some very interesting stuff right now, and you just did the whole. Well, we've been at some interesting stuff all along, but you just did kind of a Mercedes McCambridge thing, Rebecca, and that actually beckons the question: have you ever done any kind of method acting where you've deliberately tried to physically affect your voice in one way or another to get closer to the role you were performing?
Not really. I mean, it's once or twice, like when I was trying to do like a tired character, I ran up and down the stairs, but that just made me tired. And then I don't know if it made the acting better. So for me right now, the best thing is waiting till like my housemates are out so I can do all my shouty lines.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that is one of the advantages of working from home, is that you can just sort of scream when people are out. Well, we are heading up towards an hour on this conversation, so we are going to have to start moving ourselves towards the door, so that we can, fuck off. So I just wanted to ask Rebecca. I mean, when how do you actually go about? How does this process work? Do people just email you a load of lines and then you sit down and read them, or is there some kind of sort of talk between you and whoever is hiring you, or is it just this general sort of it just depends and it's all a mess?
Oh, that's what I did.
It depends on the person doing it and how much experience they've got, because I've done everything from the person is indifferent and I'm kind of actually wondering if they really want to finish their game. No dig, right? That's not a dig.
Absolutely
it
not.
would be
Absolutely.
completely deserved.
I mean, I thought it was kind of. It was great that you actually asked me in person. So when are you gonna put this out? Because basically, what happened was talking to you, I just kind of realized, fuck the botch takes, and I was getting so creative from being at Adventure X, I was just going, okay, she's got a point. It's now or never. We need to get this out there. But I completely understood where that was coming from.
I just want to get this in. We're not being passive aggressive or anything. It's not like she's underhandedly telling us.
I was
it's not like
great.
Fred is being underhandedly. You botched some takes, my dear. It's all right.
No. She didn't botch some takes. The botch takes were done by other people. But I just can't. The reason the VSB talking will never be done is because we're all perfectionists and we can't cope with the fact that there are portions of that game that are less than perfect. It's not completely done either, but that is the main reason. We will not get off our asses to finish it, because getting it perfect will be difficult, if not impossible. So that's why. But back to the question. Sorry, I digress.
Yeah, so there's a variety. Like, I've done everything from the person is indifferent to the person is very experienced or is very organized and they know what they're doing and they're very communicative. Like, for Stasis, he sent me samples like from films and stuff of the kind of thing he wanted beforehand. I had a full script. I did a ton of retakes. That's kind of the other end of the scale, and everything goes between it. And some projects it's fine. Like, I've just recorded for Neo Feud, which is an AGS game, and literally I auditioned. He sent me the script. I recorded it. And then he asked for a couple of retakes, and that went back to us a couple of times. It was done in like 2 or 3 days, and there's only like a couple of really small parts, but that was like easy and quick. And I've had other projects where it's literally, there was an anime parody thing, and he was trying to get me to say like a Japanese word, and I thought my Japanese pronunciation was all right. But the thing is, I was doing it in my natural accent, and he was an American, and he kept correcting me, and I was like, but I'm saying what you're saying. This is how I would say it in my voice. And it kept going back for like a month before he just got going, I'm just going to release it.
Quit using the alternative accent. You're using alternative English.
Stop saying herbs. There's no H in herbs. I just have a quick question before we end the episode. We've talked a lot about how you do voice acting and the process and all of this stuff. You must have some impetus for getting into voice acting, just on a lark, really. So who are your inspirations? Why? Who do you look up to in the voice acting world? Who would you want to be?
That's really hard. I think someone like Tara Strong, like she does so many voices. She's Harley in the Batman games. She's one of the Powerpuff Girls, and she just seems to work and work and work. And like, I really admire like the work ethic. Jennifer Hale as well. Like Jennifer Hale's got an incredible voice. And I don't know if any of you guys watched the Double Fine Adventure stuff. She was in that. They showed her just like.
I'm aware of her from Mass Effect, where she does the female Shepard.
She's got a reputation for just going in the booth and nailing it. I mean, again, Dave Gilbert's done some voice training with her, and he mentioned like doing this whole class with her and just saying the whole class was really, really informative. So yeah, I think Jennifer Hale and Tara Strong, I think they're both very, very good actresses, and I think they have good personas, because that's the other thing about voice acting is you're kind of putting yourself forward. And when we talk about these natural takes and stuff, and like some people may not have that much experience, but they can end up recording well, and some people don't. There's an element of yourself that you put out there when you voice act that I think is very important.
Yeah, you don't want to get self-conscious or embarrassed. My favorite female voice actor who has been in games, so this is kind of on topic, is Tress MacNeille, who most people know from The Simpsons and Futurama. She does Mom on Futurama, and actually her mom voice is when she's in front of people, she has this very calm "hello dear" kind of thing, and then when she is off, she just goes screw this and starts slapping her kids around. It just goes from one extreme to the other. She was in Full Throttle. She plays the biker leader, and again does this really gravelly voice, and she's fantastic. And she's getting on in years and such, not knocking that at all, but she's just all over the place. She is one of those, I think she just gives it 110% and is not afraid to just, scream her head off, or, go, she also does like little kids' voices, and she can just go, full range. So don't know where, I just wanted to mention her because I'm a really big fan of hers.
Well, if you're after somebody from London that's gone on to do voice acting and various other things, Marina Sirtis as well, who's done quite a lot of games.
The put on a damn uniform from Star Trek The Next Generation.
She got a lot better after she put on the uniform. So.
Yes, she did.
Anyway, we have reached that point in proceedings where we have to thank everybody for coming along, for putting up with us for an hour, and generally just being around. So, thank you very much, Rebecca. That's been
Mom.
Really good.
Thank you, Dad.
Yes, thank you.
I thought for a second you were going, thank you, Mom, too. Rebecca, it's like, what? Did I miss something?
I was slightly worried there.
Yeah,
we're going to end this by giving a list of thank yous until the music plays and sort of makes us run off. This has been Backseat Designers. You can find all of the episodes of Backseat Designers at backseatdesigners.com. We're on Facebook. You just search Backseat Designers, and we are on Twitter at BS Designers. If you want to contribute to Frederick Olsen's Coke Fund, you can find us on Patreon. And we've actually started maintaining the Patreon page now, so you'll get messages about who the next guest is, when we're going to be recording, and we try to put a few sort of outtakes and various things on there. Nothing libelous and nothing that will embarrass the guest, so you're going to be all right, Rebecca. But we do put a couple of things up there. It's just a way of saying thank you for you saying thank you to us, and it becomes this thank you cycle from which we can never escape.
And we steal your money.
It's very much like the Oscars, yes.
And then we all get diabetes because it's so sweet.
Exactly. It's very anti-British. We don't like that kind of thing. That's why we had to take all the chocolate at the Toblerones, because of the diabetes.
Yeah, so saccharine, I'm pissing syrup.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Is there anything that you would like to plug so that people can find your stuff on the internets?
My Twitter is at Azure Summer. I think you can probably find all other things from there. And my blog is gameswriting.coffee, because why not have a hipster domain name?
Nice.
Nice one.
And I noticed you have a new demo reel out, so we'll do our darndest to actually link to that in the blog post. So you'll get all these unserious propositions from indie project managers who have no idea what they're doing.
It's better
Yes.
if they peck. No.
You heard it, people. Consider it.
Yes, everything will be going up on the blog post. So if you've missed anything, then everything will be up there. Thank you again so much, Rebecca McCarthy. I will have the second name out there.
Please hire her to do a mutated voice. She's very good at it. You heard it here first.
Yes.
And non-mutated voices. They're all
yes.
very good. And she is remarkably patient. So that is a very
And
big
you
plus as
have
well.
no idea where her lighter actually is, do you?
No.
I have absolutely none because I coded it poorly. Say goodbye, Fred.
Goodbye.
Say goodbye, trolls.
Ta-ta, dearest.
And goodbye from me too, and we will see you next week.
No more for today.
That was a good one. 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 That was a good one.